Unforgettable, that's what you are. Unforgettable, though near or far.
My name is Henry Green. Let me put the Cornelius in there. I am Henry Cornelius Green. My mother is one of 6 of the Gertrude Underwood family. We are descendants from the Abbeville side of South Carolina. We moved to Chester in the early 50s, right after I was born in 1947. And mother and the rest of the family continued to grow and aspire to doing greater things in the Chester area. Well, moms and my aunt, Rosalind Luberta Johnson, they proceeded to go to Norfolk, Virginia. So in that area, they became beauticians. They went to a school there to become beauticians. Mother and Aunt Lou, they in turn returned to Chester, and they both worked in the Primrose beauty shop for a number of years. My earliest and wonderful memory of the Primrose beauty shop was as a child. I used to sit behind the coal stove, the stove that was heated by coal. And that's where I would do all of my homework on a daily basis. This was a ritual for myself and also Beverly Johnson, who came shortly after me as far as birth. We were neighbors, houses next door, 160 and 162 Wiley Street, and literally, we grew up as brother and sister. What it amounts to is that my mother, Mabel, was a consummate educator. So was everyone else in the family. They believed that education was the only way that we were all going to succeed in this world. They had experienced all of the Jim Crow type of situations that any African American, or in that time any Negro, could possibly experience. But they excelled. They all excelled. My mother did a wonderful job of becoming a beautician. So did a number of other individuals in our family become professionals in their own way. My father, who married my mother while she was literally doing her studies in the Norfolk area, who is Henry Cornelius Green Sr., was a graduate of Hampton University as a contract engineer. He in turn joined the family in the Chester area, and we resided at the home on 162 Wiley Street, which is next door to 160, which is also right next door to the Primrose Beauty Shop. My father became a very intricate part of the entire family as far as trying to help them work their way into certain professions. My mother and he had a very good beginning of their marriage. However, we lost my father in 1950. It became a very trying situation with my mother. Now she is a single parent, and now she has to raise one interesting, sometime rambunctious young child called me, the Henry Cornelius Green Jr., and sometimes it became extremely challenging. I have made friends with Mr. Blackstrap on a number of occasions. Yes, mother was a serious disciplinarian, but you know what? They all were taught to be disciplinarians by Big Mama. Big Mama understood that lax morals in the society in which we were being raised in would generally mean that you would end up on what we call in the South the chain gang. And we heard that a number of times from all of our parents.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain gang.
To whistle at a white female could cause you to be in a penal system for a number of years. To wink at a female could cause a male person to be placed in the penal system. Now, the idea is that if you, and that's being placed in a penal system if you made it to a penal system. Laws when it comes to protecting blacks in the South during our time were very lax, and sometimes you didn't make it to the penal system. People tend to hang from trees and be beat to a pulp because they were not taught by their parents that you have to discipline yourself when you're in social environments or when you're traveling up and down streets in a southern town.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day.
She ended up leaving the Primrose Beauty Shop because business was not necessarily good for two individuals in the Primrose Beauty Shop. She, in turn, decided that she should seek employment elsewhere. Mabel Green Quarles, did something that was quite unusual for the South Carolina, let alone Chester, let alone Rock Hill, South Carolina, where she became employed with the Celanese Company. Females going in the workplace, working side by side with men was still an unheard of situation back in those days. So she in turn, literally rocked the boat. She got employed there and she worked there a number of years. Unfortunately, the Celanese had begun to have cutbacks, so Mabel, my mother, I had to find employment elsewhere. My mother really stepped out on faith. She went up to New York City and became a house mother for a upscale family. You know, in those days we called them very rich. And she did a wonderful job of, according to the family, helping to raise or nanny their children. So in turn, that left Henry, me, in the protection of Miss Rosalind Luberta Johnson. Now, it was a cute arrangement. I was allowed to, as a sophomore in high school, to live in 162 Wallace Street by myself. And I would eat and do my studies next to it, 160, under the tutelage of Rosalind Luberta Johnson. And later on, my baby uncle, John Underwood, came back to the Chester area after leaving the Air Force. He in turn was looking for a place to live at that time. And the agreement was that, since my mother was not physically living in the house, he came to live with me as my uncle in charge at 160 Wiley Street. Now you want to talk about a very interesting relationship? A uncle that is 15 years older than I. He is still, a very active individual in the social life. So, it was an interesting thing for a young man in high school to see a very social-minded young uncle. So we developed a very good relationship during that time. And it just continued on until I was a senior in high school, which at that time my mother returned to the Chester area for my graduation, and then in turn she continued to find other employment throughout the area. She assisted me at that time, and in obtaining the educational funds for me to travel on to South Carolina State College right about that time. And my mother did a lot of different jobs, a lot of odd jobs. Springsville, that's where we acquired the loans for me to attend school. Now, back in those days, Springs was giving a lot of scholarships, but you do have to understand that we were still in an educational and social environment in the South. However, the decision was that I would receive, and most other blacks would receive, loans from Springs. But that was still a graced situation, because bottom line is a lot of folks could not afford to go to college during that time, especially African Americans could not afford it. So I was graced by at least having those loans. She, in turn, reunited with a friend that she knew in her high school days, and his name being Johnny Quarles. They reunited, and in turn, they decided that they would marry and hopefully live a joint and pleasurable life into their senior years. And she went to Abbeville, and I use the word back to Abbeville because that's where all of the family originated from. So, in that perspective, they built a beautiful home in Abbeville. And then, of course, the Uncle Sam in this country, called the United States Army, and back in those days called the Selective Service, pulled me into the military. The life of Mabel Green Quarles in Abbeville, unfortunately, was short-lived. There was situations that didn't allow her to continue that relationship. And then, of course, what would she do? She moves back to Chester. She moves back to Wallace Street in a home that's erected directly behind 160, and she continues her life there. All of the six-pack, they lived in Chester for most of their lives. And to separate them from Chester was something not necessarily an easy job on anybody's part. Children that had gone on to other locations, to ask for them to leave Chester to be a part of their lives. Now they would say to you, if you want us to be a part of your life, you need to come back to Chester. But an exception that really will always remain special in my heart. When I was assigned to Fort Meade, Maryland, I had two children to be born, Brian and Joseph. You have two working parents. You know, in those days, there was no way in the world that parents could give wonderful things to their children or give them special opportunities. Not things that they wanted, but things that they needed without having dual parents working. So during that period of time, we were trying to figure out how we were going to take care of two new children born 5 years apart. And, moms said it for us. You know what, Henry? I'm sitting down here doing basically nothing. I'm not able to work on a regular basis. So why don't I come live with you and help you take care of your children? And then she became our live-in babysitter. Joseph was born, and within 6 months of Joseph being born, my mother came to live with us on Fort Meade. And you want to talk about a beautiful, interesting experience. She brought religion to the house. She opened those Bibles for us, not literally, but she brought the word back into the house. We were going to church on a regular basis again, making sure that we stayed in the Word and putting our children on the right track as far as the Word. So, you're speaking of one of the finest memories that we could possibly have of my mother. She was the greatest grandparent that my children could have ever had.
Hi, my name is Helen Green. I'm married to Henry Green, and my mother-in-law is Mabel. I called her mother, and she came to live with us when Joseph was 9 months old, and she stayed with us until Joseph went to kindergarten at the age of 5 when she moved back to South Carolina. While she was staying with us, I was working. Henry was overseas most of the time, so she took care of the kids while I was at work. We wouldn't have to have a babysitter to come in to watch the kids, so it was very helpful having her living with us for those 5 years. I think she was really a family-oriented person, and her and Henry was very close. And then when the boys came along, that was just wonderful. She loved them dearly. And when Brian had Cameron, and that was just a feather in her cap to have a great grandson. She really enjoyed her boys. So I would say Mother was a very family-oriented person, and she showed that mostly by her cooking, because she loved to cook, and my boys loved to eat, so that was a good fit right there.
My name is Brian Henry Green. I'm the grandson of Mabel Quarles, Grandma Mabel. My memories is coming down, and it was Big Mama, it was Grandma, and they sat on the side and watched me, Noel, and Eddie climb on the chopped wood, and playing in between Big Mama house and Grandma Mabel's house. And most of the time we stayed outside, and Grandma Mabel stayed outside with us. But before we go, we always had iced tea, grits, and eggs, and bacon. That was always on the table when we was there. And we sat there and ate, and as Grandma read the Inquirer and got ready for her shows that came on.
You are the first 4 contestants on The Price is Right.
The Edge of Night.
A couple soap operas and always the news.
This is the CBS Evening News.
She was always informed and always reading. And she came to live with us, and she kept it going. She had outfits. She was always well-dressed, well-mannered, well-spoken, and she passed it along to us. You just can't look good. You have to be able to talk and express yourself to others. And me and her bumped heads, but in the end she won, and she taught me a lot. Taught me a lot when she was there helping to raise Joe. So I was about 5 or 6, and she would walk me to school. She'd be there and pick me up, and we'd walk right back home when we lived in Fort Meade. My grandmother is, well, my dad is my grandmother. So I see a lot of her in him. Grades, presence, poise, education being number one always. So, and those are my memories. Those are my memories. And her and Aunt Lou was always in the shop together. So I remember we would walk and see everybody and then go pay the bills, go walk to the bank, go walk to, I think it was the electric, pay the electric bill. We would walk through the town, and she was always put together very well, and very well mannered and strong, very strong. She didn't say a lot, but when she did, she'd whisper in your ear, or she'd give you that look. Mostly it was the look or the finger. I remember the switch, but that was only once, because it only took one time. She said go pick it, but she already had one. Everything was always on time. She was always on time. She always had her little routine going. She's very independent, very strong-minded woman. And that's my memories of my grandmother.
My name is Joseph Anderson Green. I'm the son of Henry Cornelius Green and the grandson of Mabel Magnolia Underwood Green Quarles. And I'm here to share some memories of my grandmother. What's interesting, and I have this conversation with people often when talking about how I was raised. My brother had a grandmother and I had a grandmother. In the sense of when my brother was born, my mother's mother came and lived with the family for a few years. And when I was born, my father's mother came and lived with the family for a few years. So Grandma Mabel was always my grandmother. And I have the same memories of her throughout most of my youth. I remember her standing on walking me to the end of the yard and walking me on the school bus in the morning, and her standing in that exact same spot when I got home in the evening. And when you're a child, you don't really understand what that kind of consistency means until you see other children who don't have that same consistency when you're an adult. Because I work with children now, and I see kids that have all sorts of different arrangements as far as their families are concerned, latchkey kids, things of that sort, whose parents are not there until 6, 7 o'clock in the afternoon. And always to have somebody that you trust, that wants to hear about your day, that you want to share your day with when you get home, just means so much to a small child, and it meant so much to me. There's this one picture I have of me dressed, I believe, as a duck. I'm not 100% sure, but when I graduated from kindergarten, I was in a play, and there's a picture of me holding my grandma's hand, dressed like whatever character I was in that play. And I think that moment and that photo kind of solidifies what our relationship meant to each other. You know, you would imagine to see that kind of photo with the dad or the mom or so on and so forth, but to allow my parents the ability to, my mother to finish college and my parents to really get their feet set in their jobs and their careers, my grandmother made the sacrifice, leaving her life and coming and staying with us. And, you know, she was my best friend for like the first 5 years of my life, which is a great thing, because I think that what happens is kids grow up and they get too cool for their grandparents, but I'll always have that. And then when I was in middle school, she would always come to stay with us for 2-3 weeks at a time here and there. And same thing. There when I left in the morning, sitting on the edge of her bed with the curlers on, came back in the afternoon, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, the whole kitchen was full of food. That's how I know what good cooking is. And how I will gauge the cooking of every woman that comes into my life is based off the cooking that my grandmother did. And again, just another wonderful memory I will always be able to keep with me for my entire life. You know, and I think back to it, and again, I was a little too cool for school. It's not like I was going and bragging to my friends, I'm hanging out with my grandma after school. But I was. And I would do my best to tell her about my day. You know, there's generational gaps at that point, you know, where I was, even though it wasn't as technologically advanced as the kids today, you know, there was still a lot of TV and phones and beepers and music videos and things that we didn't connect on because she was not aware of those things socially. But the fact that I had my friend, my grandma, always there, one, was a comfort to me, and two, was an example of how I would like my household to be one day. I would love to have my mother there for my children, just because I think that the Underwoods in general have shown what comes out of always having family around. There are a lot of examples of the other out there in the world. People, as soon as they can, they run away. And then I have so many people I tell about my family reunion, and they're like, oh, I wish we had a family reunion. It's moments and examples set by people like my grandmother, sacrificing their lives to come and live with their family, that show us why 12 years of family reunion are so important, even when it's hard to make happen. Because that's what's important about family, is that they're there, especially when things are hard to make happen.
Hello? Who's calling? Hey, how you doing? Doing fine. We're here. Hello? Yeah, I had a nice trip. It's raining little.
Who are you talking to?
Henry?
Unfortunately, I didn't have the pleasure of knowing Grandma Mabel, but I've heard lots about her through Brian and Joe and Henry and Helen. And anyone with a passion for education, as I hear she had, would have been someone special to me. And I wish that Sophie would have had the opportunity to know her and for her to know Sophie. Her legacy lives on every day through the stories that her family tells.
Hi, my name is Brian Cameron Green, and I am the great-grandson of Grandma Mabel. And I don't know much about her, but what I've heard is that she's very strong, smart, and she knows how to get things done on time, and she's very well-mannered. And my very good memories of what I have of her are the wake and the funeral, when I got to go see her, got to say goodbye and gave her a kiss, and the funeral. So those are my memories. My grades have been all honor roll, and I feel like I am doing something that would have made her proud if she was still here, and I know she would be happy with me.
She's been, you know, active in our church. It is called Calvary Baptist Church, which is in Chester, South Carolina, of course. And she has been extremely, extremely active in that church. But that being said, my mother, beautiful lady, she sacrificed so much so that I could be the person that I am. Great works, a belief in God, and you will always be a success.
And when you smile